Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and today I want to talk about features that I really notice in games. In fact, I want to answer a question from Mike Z6289 who asks, what is a feature you see in games that excites you but would seem insignificant to the average gamer? I think that's a really good question, although I'm not sure exactly who the average gamer is. But before I answer, let me just talk about like how I'm going to interpret this question. I interpret this as like what features are personal to me that I notice and I really like, but are insignificant, and I think that's an important term. For example, colorblindness support is not insignificant to me. I need it. To a lot of people, they don't know or care about that feature. But I can tell you, there have been games that came out recently that are big games that supposedly were quite enjoyable that I literally could not play because they involved solving puzzles with color. This happens every now and then. A game like this comes out. In this case, I actually got to ask the developer, why didn't you support colorblindness? And they were like, well, we didn't think it was important. And, you know, it wasn't a big deal. And I'm like, okay, so that's like 10% of the male population you just swept under the rug. Possibly more. There's a lot of different kinds of colorblindness, and there's colorblind women as well. So, okay, it's not an insignificant thing to me. So that's not something I would talk about here. Also, there are some features that I look for, not because they make me happy, but because the absence of that feature makes me angry. Perfect example is not skipping cutscenes. I can't even put myself in the mindset of a game developer who puts unskippable cutscenes in. As if saying, hey, you're playing my game now, and your time is worthless to me. Also, they're saying, don't ever replay my game, because I can't imagine you doing that. Therefore, why would you ever want to skip this cutscene? When I see a game with unskippable cutscenes, I automatically put it into my maybe pile. Like, I might play that. It has to be really, really good. But if they put features like that in that basically belittle my time, why should I even bother playing that game? So, with that said, now I've talked to you about what's personal to me and what I consider to be insignificant. Let's talk about what I like. What features in a game excite me, but most people playing the game would go, eh. Probably the biggest one is when NPCs in the game react to little things. I'm not talking about you showing up with a flaming sword or a demonic companion. I'm talking about you wearing a funny hat and you walk down the street and one of the passerby goes, hey dude, nice hat. I love that because it means that the designer thought of these things and put in the support for something like that, to have an NPC have a reaction to something like that. And I mean, we did something like that in Arcanum, where if you ran around without clothes on, because it's a Victorian themed game, people should react to you being naked, or as naked as you can get. So I like if I take off all my clothes and I walk by someone and I go, hey, you forget your pants? Now, I'm going to caveat that with I don't expect everybody to comment about it all the time. I don't want to walk down the street and go, hey, where are your pants? Forget your pants? Where are your pants? Hey, you're not dressed. But I think sometimes a few people should, and I particularly like it when the comments are unique to that type of NPC. For example, if I walk into a clothing vendor, I would love it if they said, I suppose you're here today to buy pants? That's funny because they're recognizing that I'm not wearing any pants and they're a clothing vendor. So they're willing to sell me some pants. I like that stuff. It's the designer going, and I like that. It makes the game much more charming to me. Some other things though, and by the way, Mike Z, I thought about this for a long time. I know you asked this a few weeks ago, but I've been thinking about it because I knew there were features that I simply adore. But once I thought of that NPC reaction one, I really had to scratch my head. The next one I thought about though was when the minimap or local area map is really nice and not just a camera that's put above the player's head. I like it when it's themed somehow for the game. So like if it's a sci-fi game, if it looks like a projection or a contour map, if it's a dungeon, like I loved Ultima Underworld's map because it looked like a scroll and it looked like you were writing on it. And when you took notes, a little scroll appeared and you took notes on it in handwriting. I love that stuff because you use that mini map a lot and they've gone the extra mile to theme it and make it useful. By the way, when mini maps aren't useful, when they're like, just not something you frequently use because it's just not very useful. It's easier just to remember where things are in your head. I question why do you even have the mini map? Inventory is something that frequently makes me unhappy in RPGs because you're always finding a ton of items. And if you're not finding a ton of items, I get unhappy for a different reason. So I like when role-playing games in particular make it very easy for me to either store an item knowing I want to sell it later, or mark an item in my inventory as the next time I go to a vendor, I want to sell them. And then when I get to the vendor, make it very easy to like sell all my junk, or sell everything marked here, or sell everything in this tab. Because it's the game recognizing that there's a lot of things that you pick up just to sell. And again, it's the designer going, so I like that. I think it's a really cool thing to add as a layer on top of the inventory system. Similarly, for all you level designers out there, I love it when there are little stories told in the game's scene. I call these vignettes. I don't know if there's a name for them. And you're telling that story purely with props. In other words, there are no books, no notes, no dialogue. None of my companions weigh in and go, I think what happened here. No, I just want to be able to look and see a little story being told. I've mentioned this before, but when I was playing Fallout 3 and I was going through a hotel, I found a room that was locked. And when you went inside, there were two skeletons lying on the bed holding hands. And you just knew what happened here. And I loved it. I loved that there wasn't a note saying, goodbye, cruel world. Betty and I have decided to die here in the hotel room. I don't need to know that. In fact, I prefer not to know it. I'll make it up in my head. But for level designers, when they go out of their way to kind of tell a little story with props that already existed that you've seen other places, especially, if it's not a unique prop, but it's just they've arranged props in a way that just made you go, I think I know what happened here. And even if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. In fact, I love the ones that I can think of the story of what happened. Mechanic speaking, I love in a game when I'm not forced to level up as soon as I gain the XP for it. And I know some people like this, and some people's favorite games have this. I just don't like it. I know this seems insignificant, but that was part of the question. When I get the XP, and it should just go, boom, by the way, you can level now if you want. And then I can keep gaining XP, and everything's fine. And then when I feel like it, I will level up. And that way, maybe I'll go up 2 or 3 levels before I level up. I like that because frequently you get XP in a time that's not good. Like you're fighting something and you gain some XP for killing something and then bam, the game pauses right in the middle of combat to give you XP. Or I've seen games that at the end of combat, that's when they pause. So you get XP for killing things and then as soon as combat's over, it goes boom, level up now. And you're like, I really wanted to go loot these things. I'm thinking about looting and you're making me think about leveling up. Plus I like to think about what I want to level up. So I don't want to do it right now when I'm standing in the middle of a combat field. So that's a feature that I just love seeing. And then similarly with another mechanic, I love it when perks exist that aren't about directly making the perk more powerful. But instead they exist to broaden the perk's use. So, yeah, I get it when there's a perk that says you do 10% more damage, you do 30% more damage. I get it. What I really like are seeing perks that are like, hey, you know that perk you like using? You want to use it more? For example, if you have a perk, if you're selling items to a vendor and you get a perk that says you can now sell any type of item. So you go to an armorer who normally only buys armor, and now you can sell anything to that vendor. I love perks like that. Or you can now sell stolen items to this vendor. Love stuff like that because it makes something I'm doing in the game more commonly applicable. Persuasion, which normally only works on people, if you have a persuasion skill. I love when you get one saying you can not, this now works on monsters or robots or something else in the game that normally you would think, how would I use persuasion on this thing? I love when that happens and when perks broaden their use. So those are most of the examples I could think of features that just make me go, I love that. I love that. Overall, the rule here about what it is I like seeing is I love a designer who talks to me through their work. I kept doing, they do this. If a designer is telling me, hey, I see you, I see what you like doing, I put some stuff in that lets you do it more. Here you go. That's what I like seeing. That's what I like seeing from a game when the designer speaks to me through his design in a nice way. So, Mike Z, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that gives you a better idea of what features, insignificant features I see in games that still excite me.